2024 is a brand new year, so we're going to broaden our horizons. We've got some things we want you to try out this coming year in Commander.
I'm Mia, and I like putting in more garlic than the recipe recommends.
I'm Beezy. I just took Amber to the vet. She's healthy. We're the Nitpicking Nerds, sponsored by our favorite sponsor, Card Kingdom. They are brand new. They're amazing. They have a website that you can go to buy or sell Magic cards in basically the most efficient way ever designed by human beings.
I really love Card Kingdom. It's so easy to sell with them. You just send a list of your cards and just ship them off to them, and they will pay you in store credit or through PayPal. It's really amazing. Buying through them is so easy too. It all comes in one convenient package. So tell them we sent you, use our link down below, and show them a little bit of love from the nerds.
That brings us to our favorite sponsor, Dragon Shield, because they're all our favorites. They got the best sleeves in the multiverse.
Good sleeves.
If you want to go buy some sleeves while supporting the channel and supporting yourself with real money tax dollar discount, you could save 5% when you check out a Dragon Shield using the code
NERDS.
Very simple. Also, Moxfield. We love them. There's an ad. They're our favorite sponsor. Guess where it is? If you guess right, you are a dirty liar. But this is 2024. You know, we're trying to set some new goals for the year. We're trying to figure out what we want to do. And we've just got some general tips that we think will help you have more fun with Commander this year and stuff that we're going to try as well.
There are a lot of choices in Commander that you can make when building or playing, and we're going to talk you through a few that we're trying to work on right now. Our first one is stepping out of your comfort zone. This is talking about color combinations that you usually play or strategies that you usually play. For instance, I really like mid-range stuff, and I tried out a Rowan deck that was very all-in recently, and I wasn't a big fan, but I do want to try a more all-in strategy this year because I know that there'll be one that I like, but I just have to figure it out because I haven't tried enough yet.
Yeah, one thing that really helped us was, and we'll make sure to link this as a PDF that you can download and play along if you want, but there's the 32 deck challenge. It's like a popular thing going on. We're not saying go out and build a deck of every color combination, 5 monocolored, 10 guilds, 10 tricolors. We don't need to do that. But you can plot the decks that you currently have on that list as like a kind of a graph, and then see if there's any holes that you see, like, oh, I don't really play blue and white much. I don't have a blue-white deck. I don't have a mono-blue deck. I don't have a mono-white deck. And you could say, well, I think if I were to build one of those decks, maybe that's an area I would enjoy because I haven't experienced much of that. Or, hey, I have 5 Golgari decks. I wonder if I play all of those Golgari decks. That's a whole nother tip for later, but it'll help you see maybe what you're doing too much of or maybe what you're doing not enough of and give you some ideas to brew.
Honestly, that was one of the reasons why I brewed $50 Jalira, which is a mono blue deck, and Solvala, which is like a very spicy mono green deck, because I actually used the PDF myself, and I didn't find that I had any monocolored decks. I had tried making one with Crick a long time ago, but that fell into the whole all-in strategy that I wasn't a really big fan of, so I wanted to go a different route, and that was the place where I found I was most lacking. Maybe this year you want to stay away from the Golgari/Abzan type decks. How many Abzan decks do you have right now?
I only have 6, but
six?
I promise I won't be making any more this year. I might even make a mono red deck because I know I don't have any of those. I got a mono of every other color. I feel like something's missing with the red deck. We'll see what I can get done. The next little, I don't know if you want to call it a resolution or a goal or just something that we recommend doing, play less super staples. We're always going to recommend you cards and tricks and strategies to power up your decks and make your decks more powerful, but we also care a lot about fun. We don't talk a ton about the most obvious kind of no-brainer staples that are just like really, really strong. They're cards that we tend to stay away from, and we're trying to sort of like find the perfect balance between fun and powerful where, hey, we think there's some maybe cards you can cut out of your decks that aren't that great, and there's some really cool ones you might not have heard of that you could play that are like going to do some serious work for you. But I think cutting these cards like Necropotence, Sarah Ascendant, the One Ring, Rhystic Study, there's this category of cards that, not from all of your decks, but I would recommend cutting it from a few to sort of like generate a very specific experience of not always playing with these take over the game cards.
I've actually really enjoyed putting in less super staples and putting in more synergistic removal. For instance, I used to have Farewell in both my vampire deck and in my poison deck, but instead I took out Farewell, even though I love it, for Phyresis Outbreak because that was more synergistic towards the poison side, and I put in Olivia's Wrath into the vampires deck because it was more one-sided, and I really enjoyed having those types of board wipes that really only affect me.
Yeah, and I think in some scenarios, like with Farewell, where you're kind of swapping a board wipe for a board wipe, playing the more synergistic thing lets you actually get further ahead instead of fully resetting the board, which is it's a fine way to go. Farewell's not bad, but what if in this vampire deck or this poison deck, you could just plague wind everybody, kill all their stuff, keep all your stuff, and then attack for a bunch of damage? Like, those are the little like upgrades I like to find where the card just totally fits my deck, and in some cases when I'm ahead or when I'm kind of doing what the deck wants to be doing, it's even better than Farewell, or it's even better than Sarah Ascendant or something. And in some cases I just cut the, like, nothing can really be better than the One Ring. So or Soul Ring for example. So I'm fine cutting those because that's the play experience I want. But like with Farewell, it's probably a better example of like there's probably some generic cards you can cut on the medium to medium plus power scale. Switch them out for synergy cards, and you can have a lot more fun and like more snowbally games.
You also might find that they have a lower converted mana cost or lower cost in general because they're not played as often, or they just came out in a set that you might not have been like quite cognizant about. But if you want to check the prices of things, you can actually check on moxfield.com. You can mouse over a card itself, check out all the printings, and it actually lists the price for foil and not foil on it, which really helps us do things like budget or just kind of budget out what we need for decks.
Yeah, you can get a feel for whatever your favorite vendor sells the cards for. Oh, this card's 25 cents here, 15 cents here, and $1 over here. Okay, that's good to know. Thanks, Moxfield, for compiling all this data into one convenient spot. You can even check out and click buy this deck. It'll take you to whatever website you want to go. Yeah, Card Kingdom might be a pretty good one to go with. I don't know, that's just me. But then you just go, oh, wow, because of Moxfield, I can just buy this deck in 2 seconds.
We love Moxfield. We use it to build all of our decks, so thank you so much, Moxfield.
And don't lie, we bamboozled you this early with the ad. We got you good.
Another tip that we have for this year is taking apart decks you never play. You have to actually just sit down and evaluate them and just figure out what you enjoy playing. I know that I had a few decks, like the Rowan one that I talked about a little bit earlier, where it would just kind of like haunt me from the corner, where it's like, why don't you ever play me? And honestly, because it wasn't my playstyle and because I just didn't enjoy that all-in type approach, I just felt really guilty that was sitting around, but I never wanted to play it. And taking it apart and replacing it with like Sylvala and having something in my arsenal that actually I really enjoy playing and that I'm happy to take out when the higher power type games arise is something that's like a little bit freeing, honestly.
Yeah. We're people who have a lot of decks. Mia's got, I think, 16, and I've got like 22 or 23. So even if you have a lot of decks, I think it's still important to go through each one. And I don't know, but what was that old like home decorating tip of like, if it doesn't bring you joy, you got to get rid of it. Who was that?
That was Marie Kondo.
It was Marie Kondo. Yeah, Marie Kondo. Well, let's do that. We'll go through our decks, say, does this deck bring me joy? When was the last time I played it? When was the last time I had a great experience with it? If you can't really answer those, and kind of like, or am I hoping to play this again? Or is there a card in here I want to see work? Or is there a synergy I haven't gotten to try? If you're just like pretty ambivalent to all that stuff, maybe that's a deck to just take apart. I'm sure those cards could bring you joy in a different combination, and there's other things to do with those cards. Maybe you want to build a different deck. Maybe you want to sell them. Maybe you want to trade them. Maybe you just want to not have another deck that you carry around in your backpack. I think that is very valuable. Like, it's okay. Worst case scenario, you keep your deck on Moxfield, change your mind in 2 months, and then put the deck back together.
I think it's really important to keep that in mind, that you can take apart decks too.
Yeah, you don't owe them anything.
Because you don't owe them anything. And it's kind of important to realize that just because like a strategy isn't meta or something, or because you don't win with it often, that's not always the reason that you don't enjoy playing them. Like, I have the Door to Nothingness deck. That's a really hard deck to get going because it's so telegraphed. It's so like much mana to get onto the field and to get everyone to get doored, but I still enjoy playing it. So even though the win rate is probably not as high as some of my other decks, that's not a reason I'm taking it apart. So, maybe there are decks that people like don't have the best win rate with, and that's really like, and you love playing them, so you should keep them in your arsenal. But even if you keep winning with a deck, that doesn't mean you should keep in your arsenal.
Yeah, if you're just going through the motions with the most boring deck ever that you don't enjoy, just cut it. You're gonna have so much more fun playing these new decks, the new brews. It's fine to brew a new deck. There's nothing wrong with cycling through, even if you have 10 decks. There's nothing wrong with starting 2024 with 10 decks and ending 2024 with 10 decks that are completely different. There's no rule against that. It's completely fine. It's about your own enjoyment when you're building decks. We can talk about a few decks that we took apart. Do you want to go first and just list through the ones that you cut in 2023?
I mean, I think as I mentioned earlier, I did cut Rowan. It was so all in, and I lost so much life throughout the process. All my lands hurt me. Mm-hmm. All of my spells hurt me, and I was not okay playing on the edge of like the brink of life every 3 seconds, because that's not how I really play, and because I'm just not really used to that fast go 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 play style. I really don't like rushing towards the win for the most part, so that wasn't really my style. I know you took apart more than I did. You took apart
I went through a few, yeah. So there's a deck I was trying to make work. It was Liara Porter. It was like really high power. It was all the 0 drops, a bunch of fast mana, a bunch of colorless cards to ramp into. And I started playing, and I was just like, this is not it. I gave the deck like 5 or 6 games, maybe even more, and I just eventually it wasn't bringing me any joy, and I wasn't looking forward to playing it. I was playing it as like a chore. I was like, well, I haven't played this deck in a while, and it's like, that's not why I want to do this. So I cut it, took the whole deck apart. Eventually, I ended up building a $20 Liara Porter, and I was like, well, okay, let's take the opposite. Let's go from the highest possible to the scrappiest deck possible. And I still didn't really enjoy it, and I still wasn't playing it. So I took it apart again, and I'm pretty much done with Liara Porter, even though I think that card's cool. I just couldn't find a deck that worked for me around it, so I have no problem just taking it apart. I made way for a new deck. I ended up building a Carter deck that I really like. There was an Ishkanah deck that was $20. It wasn't for me, so I changed it around, and now it's a $100 deck sitting around. I also built an Octavia deck. That was more of a deck that was not fun to play against. I have not had good luck with mono blue, so I took that deck apart, and now I have like a Thassa Blink deck. We'll see. I have fun playing that deck, but I think there are rumblings of it not being very enjoyable. What was the other one? Oh, yeah. I took apart a Vorinclex Monstrous Raider deck. It was a Planeswalker deck. I know this deck I did enjoy playing. It was very kind of glass cannon-y, but this was an example of me just doing the thing. I played Vorinclex. I played a Planeswalker. Maybe 5 or 6 times that happened, and then I won the game because I got an emblem really early. It was cool. I had fun, but the deck had nothing else to offer me, so I got rid of it.
I think we talk about building decks a lot and just building the things that spark your joy and that sort of thing. However, there is no shame in taking apart or retiring decks too.
Our next tip is going to be able to be acted upon during the actual games that you play. This is one that I've been trying out, I would say, more or less for the last year, and it's generally worked for me. It's just to wait for your moment in the games, show maybe a little bit more patience than even what you think is tenable. I know that there have been some games, especially recently, where I had a board wipe and it made sense to fire it off, but just waiting even 1 or even 2 turns and just getting this political talky value out of it and just trying to hold my removal as much as possible, it's pretty much always benefited me when I look back on it.
I've played a lot of CEDH with BZ recently, and it's really kind of hammered the point home of the fact that there are other opponents in the game. Priority goes in a certain order for a reason. Mm-hmm. You can ask if they have stuff or just kind of see what they do before you use your removal. Don't skip the order of priority, or you can ask, hey, does anyone have removal? Because I think that you holding up your removal to the last second obviously is the best idea because it conserves your resources and that, and because that's pretty basic. But the fact is that you can rely on your opponents even a little bit to remove stuff sometimes, because it can be hurting them just as much, if not more, than it's hurting you.
Yeah, I've been taking a more passive role in games and trying to lean back and then try to pounce on the game more. And I feel like I've seen some reasonable success with that. It's just I think every threat isn't as scary as it seems at first. A lot of the times, some things can just be waited on, especially in these metas where combat is generally how the game is going to end. Man, it just feels like I can wait longer and longer. I'm sure at a certain point I'll push it too far and go, probably should have cast that sorcery on my turn. But with instants, I'm waiting until the last possible second. I'm playing chicken.
Yeah, I definitely wait a long time with instants too. There's certain times when you'll watch people have a counter war and you won't want to jump in, or you will want to jump in, and if you waited 2 more spells to be put on the stack before you cast yours, you could have just taken advantage of it fully because yours would have resolved on top. Mm-hmm. I think that's just a really important thing to keep in mind, that just being patient and holding it back and then just asking questions while you play the game is pretty substantial in the long run, considering you don't have to answer everything.
Yeah, my next one is a big one for me personally, because I know that doing Nitpicking Nerds, I'm coming up on 6 years. I've built so many decks, hundreds, and I've just accumulated so many cards, and I don't trade and I don't sell at events up until a couple months ago, maybe 6 months ago. But once I started selling my cards, this card's $30, I don't play it. And once I got my first, like $1,000 from like a binder full of things that I never played, I felt pretty good about it. So I would put a strong recommendation to just selling the stuff that you don't need and you just have laying around. Like Hopeful Initiate, it's a $5 standard card for no reason and nobody cares about it in Commander. That's the stuff that I wish I would have gone out of my way to sell when I realize it's expensive and I have nothing to do with it. Like these are the cards, these are the benefits to going to events, take a small binder with you, just start unloading this stuff and you can fund more decks, fund your next meal, pay rent, whatever. I am loving having a little bit of cash in my hand instead of these cards that are just collecting dust. I like building decks, I like having cards on hand, but as the builder of your own decks, you kind of know what you are and are not going to use.
I don't buy as much or sell as much as BZ does, but I do have a trade binder, and if you don't want to cash in your cards because you feel a little bit bad or something, just trading them is also a really nice experience to go into these events or just go to your local game store, and having a binder can really help you make friends. I have some really special cards in my CEDH Kalia deck that are shiny, and I really have good memories attached to them because I've traded for stuff that I don't use or I don't need, or I wanted to pull a booster pack and I got something really valuable, but not to me, so I traded away for something I really actually wanted.
I mean, there's been examples recently where you traded like an old border foil for like a new border full art foil that you prefer, and each of you was like, oh, I'd rather have the other one. So it was like the easiest trade ever.
Yeah, it's been super nice to have those trade binders, and I guess this also goes into check your bulk too, because there are some cards in bulk that can be really spiking in price. For instance, did you know the new Atali is anywhere from like $16 to $30? We remember when we pulled a collector box each and they were like $2.
They were sub $3 and now they're, closing in on 30 in some cases. So just check your bulk for sure. Get those mini binders together, or just a small box of cards. Try to sell some at every event. I think it's just gonna, for me, it mentally lightens the load of. I feel like I'm bogged down less by all this stuff. I feel like I got a little bit more cash in my hand. I'm less stressed about that. It's been good all around. And honestly, a new tool that we're going to start using is the Card Kingdom buy list. This isn't even an ad for it. It's just, I think they have a really great buy list, and I'm going to keep using it.
Yeah, I used it prior to being sponsored by Card Kingdom, and it was really awesome. But if you have a little bit more cash in your pocket, you should actually go to Whatnot.
Well, when you sell your cards.
Yeah, once you sell your cards, come to Whatnot. We're actually going to be having an amazing stream soon, and we are going to be giving away a full collector box of Ravnica Remastered, and we're going to be building a deck out of this beautiful set booster box, and we're going to be giving it away to one of you guys who joins the stream and enters for free.
Yeah, so every 8 minutes or so, we're going to be throwing out a collector booster pack for somebody to win for free. It's a giveaway. You don't have to pay money for this. I guess I don't even know what our tie-in of getting cash in your hand had to do with this, but you're winning this stuff for free. So come win the collector boosties, and also we're going to build a deck with you. Help us build the deck, because then you might win it.
Come hang out. We do deck audits a lot, but right now you can literally build the deck with us with all the cards on screen.
And that is when?
And that is this coming Saturday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Be there or be without free giveaways.
But if we're going to talk about card resolutions in the new year, how about trying some new cards? I think one of the things that we want to try most is making a list of cards we want to try from each set, like 5 cards each, and then just putting them in decks and seeing how they work. I know that we stress a lot about the top new commanders and the decks that you want to build from them. However, there are a lot of really awesome cards that come out in the 99 that usually get overlooked, or we are just too focused on the commanders themselves than replacing them into the decks, and we should really be more on top of that because there's some really cool synergies that are coming out.
It's just too hard to keep up with the set releases. They release 5 sets every time you turn around. If you take a 3-month break from Magic because you're going on vacation and your friends don't play there, you come back and there's 3 new sets. It's a lot to keep track of. So what I would recommend is let's make a list. 1 card, 3 cards, 5 cards, whatever, from each new set. Don't spend $1 million. Just, buy a couple $1 cards, $2 cards that you think would be cool. We just keep putting them off, and then it's 2 months in, and it's like, oh, I really haven't tried all the Lost Caverns of Ixalan cards I wanted to. Hope I'm ready for Karlov Manor. It's like, I'm not ready. But if I just bought those 5 immediately, I know I was going to play them. So it would have just saved me a bunch of time, and I would have got to test all these new cards. So really start to get a groove with these new set releases, and let's just make sure that we can always test these new cards and constantly figure out the coolest, best synergies.
Whether they're budget bombs or whether you proxy them or you just want to straight up just buy them, I think it's a really good option to test what your deck likes, what they don't, what your meta's really into, what they find threatening, and just test those synergies. I know you recently put Everflowing Well, I think, into your deck.
Yeah, and it was actually pretty sweet. I just played it on a stream, and I actually liked it. I wish I would have bought it earlier, or honestly, I kind of forgot this was an option because I don't personally proxy. Just friggin' proxy the things. Oh man, I want to try Moonshako Cavalry, I want to try Rowan, and I want to try Candy Grapple. All right, just proxy them when you see the spoilers come out. Throw them in a deck, then you can figure out really quick, in a week or two, if you actually want to buy the cards, then buy them from Card Kingdom or some other website, I guess.
Redacted.
Redacted website. And then you're going to have them in your deck sooner, and it's just going to be a better process.
I think that when it comes to power creep in Commander, a lot of the times the reason that decks fall behind, per se, is because, a ton of sets come out and they just slowly, incrementally, get left behind. And then, 2 years back, my deck's how far behind? They can't, a 7 here can't keep up with a $20 deck here. Mm-hmm. Who knows, really? But I think just taking a couple cards and putting them into your collection or just trying them out is really, really important and will help the longevity of the game and your enjoyment too.
Yeah, next tip is a pretty big one that you can do this year. Is as long as you stick to it and you decide to start, right now or a week from now, you just pick a starting point and then keep track. Track your games, especially if you have specific questions that you want answered. I know I'm a very analytical person. I love looking at YouTube analytics, and I just love data. So I track my Commander games because I'm just generally curious about what's my Commander win rate, what decks of mine are winning the most, or what's winning the least. I just love having those little data points, but there's a bunch of different information you could get by tracking different things. I only really track what deck I'm playing and whether I win or lose. But if you want to know how much benefit you gain from going first, you can also track if you go first, second, third, or fourth. You can check, are my decks on par with everybody else's? Am I winning too much when I say that I'm playing the same level as everybody? Or is that just, some kind of skill? Is it a skill issue?
Yeah, it really is important if you do like that analytical data. We have a friend named Sam from the Howling Salt Mine. Love you, Sam. We had an episode with them, and he actually keeps a very detailed spreadsheet of his games. He has everything from win rate and what everyone was playing to things like salt level and what turn, and just I think there's 10 columns. You were really into it.
Because that's a healthy play group. I personally can't track too many things, so I keep it pretty limited, but I big respect for anybody who wants to keep track of more. Just start an Excel sheet, or I have an app. I just use the Notes app on my phone with a little binary the to-do list bubbles that you just check or not. I just check it if I win and I leave it unchecked if I lose. Pretty simple. But you can figure out what decks of yours are underperforming. If you're trying to let's say you're taking Nitpicking your strategy advice, you're trying to win more games, we'll start taking our advice, and then you can see, literally, am I winning more games than I was 2 months ago? I mean, I would wager yes, of course.
I just also remembered that Sam actually puts notes of his games into the spreadsheet too. It's on turn 1, this came down, and then this person played this, and then a board wipe happened there, and then they won.
Nobody paid for Ristic Study this game,
Yeah, I think that's also really important in terms of tracking. It doesn't just have to be as complicated as a 20-column spreadsheet, and it doesn't have to be just as simple as win-loss per deck too.
Yeah, figure out what questions you have.
Yeah, and what you want answered, and then you can really hone your deck building skills or play style on what your weaknesses are and what your strengths are.
This is my biggest one. I recommend that to anyone who has questions about their decks that they can't really answer because it would require a bigger sample size. Here's your chance. Get 50 games under your belt, then start looking at the data, because I do love some data. What is our next tip?
Our next tip is to speak up during games. Politics are a part of Commander, and I feel like a lot of people just forget that sometimes, considering it's the card quality is very important, of course, because that's half the game too, but the people around you are also part of the game. Politics and questions are okay, and they're free actions. You can do them at any time. You can cast an instant.
We like to say that talking costs 0 mana, and it's a spell that you can cast over and over and over. Don't overdo it, but you can comment on a spell that somebody plays. I do it pretty frequently. I like to lay back, and I like to just say, hey, anyone else scared of that? I think I'm pretty scared of that. And then, I'm not arguing with people. I'm not going to it's not the Beezy show where every time somebody does anything, it cuts back to my reaction. It's just I like to chip in some comments, try to work with people when I can. And this is kind of goes back to our other tip of being patient. Well, you can be extra patient with your instant speed removal or your board wipe by working with someone and saying, hey, if you do something that favors me this turn, I won't wipe the board until my next turn. And that happens pretty frequently.
It can also help your bluffing game too if you do like to, you know,
Oh, yeah.
just like swing the truth a little bit in a different direction. But it can also really help when it's like, hey, are you going to attack me with that? You know, that sometimes that's something I ask a lot.
It's a big one.
That is like an underlying threat, I guess.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, so
what are you doing with that?
What you doing over
What are
there?
your plans?
Yeah, and then I was like, oh, that's kind of dangerous. Or does anyone have removal? I mean, I think that's really, really important because even though you want to win, obviously, because that's why we're all playing to win, we don't have to answer every problem that hurts us individually because some people also have answers.
Yeah, I will give away a little bit of my BZ secret spice strategy, but I thought of this like yesterday, and I wanted to bring it up in this now that I remembered it. It was a game we were playing, and this is just kind of how I roll in general. I will give my honest feedback of a spell or something on the stack 90% of the time, and then 10% of the time I'm completely selfish, and I try to mix it in so that it's basically just indistinguishable, where I'm just like, man, that's really bad, I hope we can figure something out. But there was a game that I remember where it was against you, and I said the like not true version, the 10%, on some card that I couldn't win if it stayed in play, and then I think you killed it, and I untapped and won, and I was just like, it just so happened to work out for me. But that's just like my general if you had to boil it down really quick to how I politic, it's 90% legitimate concern and like just my reaction to cards like, oh, that's not so bad, you know, yeah, I guess that's scary, but maybe we can wait to answer it, versus like, oh, that thing that I secretly can't beat, I think we should get rid of it, guys. That's my honest opinion.
I mean, it's completely fair, right?
Zero mana.
Yeah, it's 0 mana to lie in games, says Beezy, I guess, 10% of the time. But no, it's just, you're playing to win. You're not, unless you're playing a complete group hug deck, you are playing to end up on top of everyone. So it never hurts to bluff. If you have the extra mana up, you can say, where's that getting pointed? And if you have 2 cards or even 1 card in hand, you could be like, oh, well, I wouldn't do that if I were you. Ooh, I don't know if you'll live to next turn. Like,
another good one that I've heard, I don't use it too much because I don't play the most counter spells, but should I counter that? Like,
do I do that a lot?
You've done it a few, but that's one in general that to me, I go, my ears perk up. I'm like, dang, I don't know. I just question my whole life. Maybe I should. What do you want me to do?
I feel like I do that and I go, huh. And then like 2 seconds, like, yeah, that resolves. And you see me do that,
you just
Afero,
sow the seeds of
which
doubt.
is incredibly funny because I don't play blue most of the time.
Yeah.
So I know our friend Modanon knows this. I know Beezy knows this very well.
You play non-blue counter spells and you make everyone fear them.
And it's so funny because I could just have like a black mana and a red mana up, and I go, yeah, I guess that's fine. You could do that.
And I'm like sweating bullets thinking about Tybalt's trickery for the 8th time.
Imp's Mischief.
I'm like, please me, I'll do whatever you want. You're sitting there with like swamp in hand.
Yeah, 2 swamps actually. Yeah, so asking and lying, I guess, is a free action.
Free action for bluffing. Everybody challenge yourself to speak up one additional time in a game where you wouldn't have before. What is our next one?
Our next one is trying a different power level. There are so many power levels in Magic, and I feel like when people don't challenge themselves to try different things, that you kind of get stuck in that similar, like, that's why everyone says like my deck's a 7. If they all end or like around the same turn, it's really good, but challenge yourself to build new brews. I mean, proxying is free, and for instance, I was the one who brought BZ into the $20 deck, like budget deck world, because I had made a joke with a friend and we were making like super cheap decks, and I was like, what, you can't make a deck under $20? That's insane. Like, I can. Like, look at this is $16.
Yeah.
And so it kind of became a joke and a
it's
challenge.
Like a reverse arms race.
Yeah, it became a joke and a challenge among our friends, but also it really helped us keep up with the fact that some just newly released cards are really, really cheap, really, really powerful, and super fun to build around, and you should keep an eye on the newer releases too.
Yeah, I really have more fun when I'm building around a restriction. That $20 thing that Mia brought up, I mean, I now have 5 $20 decks and 5 $50 decks because they're really easy to build. All 5 of those combined, you know what, all 10 of those decks combined pretty much cost less than what a normal deck that I would brew is anyway. So I had to literally cap myself. I'm like, I can't build more than 5 each because I could just do this forever. It like totally scratched an itch that I had that I wouldn't have gotten from just building more, you know, $500 decks, $800 decks, whatever. Throw all the fetches in, and it's like that started to bore me. But that is like perfect. So totally go outside your comfort zone. Another thing I did recently was build a $5 Carador deck, and I'm having so much fun. I'm looking at these garbage chaff cards that like just barely do enough or just barely do what I need them to do. And I'm casting them every turn, and I'm just like having the time of my life.
Yeah, I think it's really, really cool to see certain restrictions under budget. For instance, in my mono blue Jalir deck, which is polymorph, I can't have a lot of creatures in there that are non-legendary, or else I'll polymorph into them, and that's really bad for my game plan. So I'm playing stuff like this counter spell that amasses. It's counter target spell and
Saruman's trickery.
Yeah, and then amass, because then I can polymorph that into a bigger creature that I really want. And it really, like, keeping an eye on the Lord of the Ring cards really helped me for that. And it's just really, really cool to kind of see that in action. Another thing we've been doing is, as I mentioned earlier, we've been playing CEDH more. And it's really interesting to, I have my Kali deck, and I bumped it up to Fringe CEDH, putting in things like the cheapest removal, or putting in combos.
Fast mana.
Yeah, those both $20 and CEDH are both things that BZ and I never really did too much prior.
Well, I did a lot of CEDH. I think maybe I got you into the CDH a little bit because I had a CDH deck Carador sitting around. I've just been upgrading it and upgrading it. Now I've got to play it more on stream and stuff, and I'm just super happy to do that. I like playing at the highest power level too. It's nice to do that, 1 in every 10 games.
Yeah, it really helps us like let loose, and it really helps us kind of figure out, should we hold back our removal? I think it's made me genuinely a better player because it makes me think a lot more, and I can't get away with as much. I get really punished if I play something too fast, or I play something and I'm like not taking into consideration the rest of the players, the resources they have available, or the benefit the benefit that they'll get from me not paying an Esper Sentinel trigger or a Rhystic Study trigger. I think it's really important to try everything at different power levels to figure out new synergies, to figure out like being a better player in general, and just overall knowing more about every like power level of CEDH and normal CEDH. It's just a really good way to make yourself a more well-rounded player.
Yeah, I just had a game where I had an infinite combo on board, and I could activate it. I could start the loop whenever I wanted, and I had to choose when to go off, and it was like 51%. Do it on my turn and 49% do it on an opponent's turn or something. And I chose wrong, and I lost immediately. And it was just like, you have to earn your wins. It feels like a lot more. And I like the harsh brutality of it. I used to play 1v1 like tournament Magic all the time. Grand Prix, PPTQs, RPTQs. It was so much fun, and I loved the losses sting more, but the wins you like feel like you earn more, and it's like you really scrape for it.
I think it's really important, and the fact that when you have those earned wins or even like losses that really sting, you do remember what you did wrong, and it really sticks with you a lot more than in a casual game where you're like kind of allowed to goof off, when you're allowed to have a ton of like takesy backsies. I think that's another one too. Like with your power levels, also figure out like takesy backsies.
Figure out the number of those that you're comfortable with. We're not saying there's even an optimal number, but just in CDH, we've noticed just a little bit different swing of things. I want to know what your tips for us are. What would you recommend that we do in 2024? And if you want some explosive commanders that are going to explode all over the board and destroy everything and just make an explosion, you can check that video out right here.